Hi, Misha here, and this is definitely not a video I've tried to record all week and things keep happening. No, not at all. In fact, all year, I've wanted to revisit, talk about the famous, infamous FEG HD18, first imported by Trident, now imported by B&T USA, and the SVD Dragunov. I kind of noticed I've never really done a history video on that gun in depth, although we've done quite a few shooting range videos. And of course, when the HD18 first came out towards the beginning of 2021, we were covering it too. All right, HD18 first shots. Held open. This is going to be probably a multi-part video. You might notice kind of when I'm thinking about a gun, it'll appear 2 or 3 times. And I want to get into the history in a video, and I want to do a range comparison with the Romanian PSL and one of the Zastavas, maybe the M76 or M91 or maybe the M77 even. But today, I thought it would be interesting and fun, and because I had one come in to do a transfer for a client, compare an original HD18 Trident import with one of the current Berger and Thomat, the B&T USA imports, because there are differences, more than you might think. On the other hand, a lot of similarities. So before we literally dive into the boxes, if you could, please like, share, and subscribe, but also check out some of my older videos on these. And, you know, I have reasons for why I wanted an SVD or a Tiger, as do most folks. I know that they're probably not technically, objectively worth the money. However, a lot of things aren't. Subjectively, there's a reason that a lot of us Cold War Gen X people, and I'm sure a lot of millennials too, really just have a thing for Yevgeny's gun. So we're going to begin with the case itself. This is the case. My original one came in 2021. Kind of cracks me up because it's basically an extended version of the same type of case, the same brand that the Swiss SIGs now ship in today. It's long enough for the gun, but just barely. And while it's, you know, relatively deep and tall enough, you're kind of cramming stuff in, which probably explains why one of the changes that I first noticed was this case. Yeah, they're definitely shipping these in a bigger case now. Now, it's not just ginormously bigger, but in every dimension: length, height, depth. Bigger. Which really makes shipping these a lot of fun. However, it does give us a lot more room inside, including being able to mount the optic if you wanted to use this as a carry case going to the range. So let's push the old case aside and crack this thing open. Fox's first time with the Dragunov.
Beautiful.
Oh, and before the internet does the internet thing, I am not selling these. I obtained this for a client because he asked me. I'm not saying it's bad to sell them, but I don't stock them in my store, although I still own mine. But this is from the most recent batch. Now, it does come in plastic here. Took it out because we had to do the serial number for logging in, of course. And as you see, there's pretty good space in here. Let's move this up just for a second. Look at the accessories as such. This is our optic. Of course, the pouch. We do have a long single section cleaning rod, which is not correct. Later in the video, we'll look at the actual correct cleaning rod, at least for military. We've got a Velcro thing. That definitely did not come with mine. Some other paperwork that I'm going to put this on in case the wind blows it off. And a literal full manual. That is a manual. So, a little bit more paperwork and accoutrement that came with mine. So inside this double bubble wrap, I don't know why they thought that was something that really needed protecting, is your thread-on flash hider. Of course, these do have the 5/8 by 24 threads. We'll talk about that front sight in a minute. How it was kind of good in theory, not so great in execution. We've got 2 metal mags, although they do have the modern polymer followers. You might think that's them cheaping out, but actually, if you think about it, in the cold, polymer is far less likely to freeze up, stick, even in just the climates, compared with steel on steel. So I'm not knocking them for it. And then finally, we have the accessory kit. We have a modern oiler, looks like a couple of batteries for the optic, batteries included. We do have the specific cleaning toolkit for a Dragunov, and of course a cup for the optic there. So those be the accessories. What about the rifle? And is it a sniper rifle or a designated marksman rifle? And why is that kind of Cold War propaganda? Here she is. Machined receiver. 1 to 1200 rear sight. 24-inch barrel. These do have the 2-position gas regulator. Kind of interesting because a lot of our previous guns did not, like the Chinese or the Tigers. So that's cool. But then, of course, we do have the things that FEG Defense or FEG Firearms changed. For example, the stock here, rubber recoil pad, removable cheek rest. These handguards that they laughably say are M-LOK compatible. But of course, the biggest deal is this front sight assembly. Open topped. And it's kind of interesting how they fix this nut on. You actually have to unscrew and release this wedge, and then this screws off, and then you can put it back on. So I think they were trying to go for kind of a semi-fixed thing with that flash hider, and it looks close enough. Not the front sight base itself, of course, but the actual flash hider is at least kind of SVD style. And it does have the modern smooth top cover. Takes standard SVD mags. Standard. And flipping it over, we've got very familiar AK style controls, at least the charging handle, safety selector. Generally speaking, the trigger. Again, the sights are very similar. Externally, a Dragunov, a Tiger, an MD, and this is an NM86. I'm leaving that in. Why not? They look very similar to an AK, but of course, internally, mechanically, and the way they're made, very, very different. And I mentioned just a minute ago about, is this a sniper rifle or a DMR? In the US, we always say, oh, it's a DMR, because it is mass-produced, and the idea was to issue 1 SVD 63 per squad, give or take, at least back in the Cold War. But Russia considers these sniper rifles. Always has. And the history behind them really relates to the M14, the FAL, Russia's adoption of first the SKS, then the AK, how that kind of left them with a bit of a gap. And of course, remember, Russia had quite the history of using the M9130 PU sniper rifle, Mosin, in World War II to great effect, and those were mass-produced. No, when the Dragunov first came out, they expected it to be under about 1.25 MOA with more or less standard light ball ammo, and just over 1 MOA with special 7-in-1 marksman sniper grade ammo. Now that did change over time because the original twist rate went from 320 millimeters to 240, and that did lose some accuracy, but it did give some benefits. By the way, in inches, it's like 1 in 12.6, I believe, and 1 in like 9.4, which is kind of standard for most of these 7.60x54 type guns in Russia. So my point is, they considered it a sniper, and 1 to 1.5 MOA with decent ammo, that's more than enough for its purpose, although some might scoff. But then again, it was only expected to reach out anywhere from about 500 to 800 meters, 1,000 about max, so that might give more credence to calling it a DMR, and that's certainly what the US and the West did, because saying, hey, every Russian squadron has a sniper is not exactly great for morale and PR. So it's debatable. Both sides kind of say one thing and the other disagree, but Russia definitely considers these snipers. And that's why they're kind of so very iconic for Cold War history, whereas, something like the M24, while they're very, very neat, maybe isn't as much. I don't know. Then again, I think a lot of us that grew up during that era just kind of have the enemy weapons thing. We were the weirdos that liked Darth Vader and Cobra Commander more than, say, the good guys. Duke was kind of boring. So, now we got this out, let's compare it with my old gun and check out some differences, because, we can pretty much see some similarities. Well, you can see. I can't say shit. So, current 2024 B&T. Old, no one wants it. Trident 2021 that I'm sure destroyed the value of by modifying. Kind of halfway kidding. No, when mine came in, it had the same handguard, same stock, and same front sight base. These are the parts that are unique to the HD18, let's say. And the rest of it is suspiciously very, very similar to the Tiger in Russia, the semi-automatic version of the SVD, first introduced by Izhmash in 1992 for the civilian market, and also exported over here for a couple of years until the bilateral agreement in 94, where Russia voluntarily said they would quit shipping military-type guns for the civilian market in America, and did. Fun fact, the Tiger was actually never banned. Russia just quit exporting them, and for various other reasons, they didn't happen. It's almost as if maybe a third party nation could just, be the intermediary, since again, never banned. And since the Tiger is not a military gun, it's a civilian version of it, there are different rules. Military guns are treated a lot stricter, but I don't want to get into that here and now. I want to compare these two. So the same furniture, all that. One thing that may be hard to make out on camera, because I pretty much suck at cameraing, is the finish. These original ones had a very, paint over phosphate finish, much like a Vepr, or I guess more exact, a Saiga. The newer ones have more of an even finish, especially on the receiver. I've seen people call it bluing. Maybe it still kind of feels like a type of paint to me, a Cerakote, but either way, the finish is a little different. This is a little more, kind of has a chalky texture. And that's not a bad thing. It's more of a matte texture. This is more of a painty texture. Almost as if this were done at a different factory from this one. Funny that. Another interesting difference. The first batch guns had this style of safety selector, standard SVD 63. Notice the lip on the bottom it moves just like a Kalashnikov. See, up when safe. It also serves as a effectively dust cover for that slot when up. Cool. But the second batch onward has this style. Notice that this is on the upper part. See, when it's up there. And because of that small change, the top cover is also a little bit different, because it's cut back just a little bit more to let that come up. What this is an SVDS style selector. Now, the SVDS was first dreamt of in the late 70s for paratroopers, maybe the Marines, basically as a compact sniper rifle, DMR if you want to be that way. And what they did, well, nothing in the 80s because of the Afghan war. Beginning in the 90s, though, Izhmash, kind of a rebranded ISIS, following the fall of the Soviet Union, falling down London bridges. Around 95, they introduced the SVDS for service, and they shortened the barrel from its original 24.5 inches. I think that did include the flash hider, down to about 22.25. But they also thickened it up just a little bit, made it a little more rigid, so it's a little heavier but a little shorter. And they introduced a pistol grip and a tubular folding stock. Kind of think like the stocks you see on Vepr 12s, kind of similar to that. They had tried in the very beginning to just put on like AKS 74 folding stocks, the metal ones, but they discovered that the left folder really interfered with the scope, because whereas most AK-74s did not have an optic on them, SVDs did. So it just wasn't worth it. So they went to a right side folding stock, and it was reinforced for the heavier cartridge. But of course, when it folds to the side, it would potentially impact the selector and make it harder to use. So they altered it a little bit, moved this up, and boom, Bob's your uncle. There it is. Of course, the markings too would vary often. And so those are kind of the big differences, aside from just the different import marks. And you also notice this little cutout here. That's kind of for a neat little accessory.
Not my target now. Open.
A clamp-on bipod, which you've seen in mine. The idea was we didn't want to clamp anything to the barrel because, despite what some say, they actually really were concerned with getting practical accuracy out of these. Let's clamp it onto the machined receiver and make it, pretty easy to take on and off, and relatively lightweight. Now, this is technically a modern, more or less commercial one, but it is Russian. Here it is. It effectively just clamps on. Notice the indexing pin slot, and folds forward. Adjustable little legs. Simple, not terribly weighty, and several variations have done served over the years. But it's an interesting little solution, and it's neat that both of these have provisions for it. And here's the modern mag. This is actually my mag out of my gun, polymer follower. 10-round mags were the standard, and really I think the only capacity made, except for some 5-rounders for export purposes. And the idea with the SVD was they wanted to do a semi-automatic, even though they knew that would negatively impact overall accuracy.
Dragunov. Got your held open.
I would apologize for the leaves coming onto the table, but hey, it's autumn. It's festive. No, they considered a bolt action. They knew the benefits of bolts over semi-automatics after all, in the Patriotic War, World War II. They had the SVT-40 semi-automatic and the 9130 PU bolt action, and yeah, they saw real quick that yeah, bolt actions are going to be more accurate. However, the idea was volume of fire. It was a good enough thing. It was accurate enough. In fact, minimum standards, even after the switch to the 240 millimeter twist, was 3 MOA, although all SVDs are better than that. Keep in mind the M4 in the US military is like 4 MOA or 5. So yeah, it was enough to do its purpose, but they wanted to equip 1 per squad. That never really happened, at least not all the time in all militaries, but they were able to at least give 1 SVD to every platoon. And I don't mean just within Russia, I mean throughout pretty much the Warsaw Pact. Germany was a particular fan, but Hungary, Poland also had them. But no, they wanted to go up against the FAL, the G3, the M14, because when they went to the AK and the SKS, namely the AK, the 7.62 cartridge gave great benefits at close range, but they felt that there was a gap compared with 7.62 NATO, 7.62 51. Going to 7.62 54R, along with, of course, the PKM, it gave them that range. So they wanted to be able to deliver a good volume of fire, be able to go to target to target to target relatively quickly, and change out magazines and keep on it going. And to kind of compensate for only having a 10-round mag, that's why the SVD, unlike the AK, had a last round automatic bolt hold open, hold back. Now there's no manual release. The idea was you simply pop your empty mag out, and then once you put a fresh mag in, you just, and there you go, and you're ready to go again. So they sacrificed, knowingly, a little bit of extra accuracy and a little bit of range for being able to do volume of fire and just mass issuance of these guns. Of course, they would always pick the best recruits when it came to accuracy when possible, but they knew what they're doing. They weren't being sloppy. These are well-made guns for their purpose. And speaking of mags, they actually were issued with a total of 5. Here's my pouch. Holds 4 in the front. You know the design. It's been copied by Romania, Yugoslavia, China. So typically you'd have 4 in the pouch, and then a lot of folks would have a 5th mag in their gun. Interestingly, unlike the SVT-40, these could not be topped off by stripper clips, obviously, because of the top cover. So the pouch is pretty neat. Your unique cleaning kit goes up top. And not only do you have the 4 mag slots in front, you've got a very big open pocket in the back with small little compartments inside for cleaning gear and your optic when not deployed. Sorry. I really did want to do this video in front of the camera, but it's just been a busy week for all my friends and no one was able to make it. Anyway, you can put a lot of neat stuff in here. And here's that cleaning rod that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, it's a 3-piece rod, unlike that single one, but what's unique about it is it has this triangular cross-section, which I think is just super cool and unique. Romania and Yugoslavia kept a standard steel rod, and to be fair, the original SVDs did too. I don't know when this style came in, but yeah, this is the style, and of course you could put it together and clean your bore. Although I don't know how often they would use a steel rod when other options that were less dangerous to the bore were available, but yeah, it was there. And I do wish the HD18 came with the correct cleaning rod. It's interesting that they took the time to give you a cleaning rod, just not the right one.
Very nice.
I've danced around the topic several times on the optic, and unfortunately, even though it's a critical part of the system, along with accuracy, that's just not something I can give you guys. You know why. I try to compensate in other ways, but there it is. But the PSO-1 was with the SVD system from the get-go in the 1960s. Now today, I think the newest version is called the PSO-1M2, and there are other systems coming online, and there were also some night sights used with what was known as the SVD N1, and they were typically like the NSP3 and other nights, but most were these 4-power daytimes. These covers are neat, and you can actually strap them on the gun. And of course, this uses a side rail system, very much like seen on the Kalashnikov, but a little bit different for the SVD. And this newer version takes a kind of modernized battery. A lot of the original Russian optics used wet cells, especially the early night visions. That was fun. And they even had a cold weather kit that would move the battery from the optic to in your shirt pocket. Again, I wish I could give you more on optics, guys, but I'd just be pretending. But the idea was they were pretty well quick install, quick remove for transport, because the idea was these were meant for the motorized infantry, mechanized systems. Russia was kind of ahead. Look at the transports they had, from the BTRs to the BMPs, the BMDs. You know, they were kind of ahead. So take it off, and you were meant to store this in your bag, and when you put it on, it would more or less keep 0. You know, good enough for government work, literally. And here it is, slid onto mine. Takes no time at all. Clamps on, and of course it's adjustable. And that's another reason this really wouldn't matter if it was a sub MOA gun, because, you know, that type of optic QD it's going to do enough, but you're not going to keep that level of accuracy. But these weren't meant to. And the newer guns still come with the same type, as far as I know. And they're marked Belarus. At least they used to be. Where they're actually made, where these are actually made, it doesn't really matter. They're neat guns for what they are. But anyone who buys one, they're not going to keep this furniture or this front sight on. This 2-piece threaded front sight assembly was literally an afterthought. This is something that FEG installed, modified, put on, changed to appease U.S. Customs, ATF, and let these be importable. Look, it uses the same 2 pins across the barrel as a standard one. This is definitely cast metal. My first one actually cracked. I think Rob Skis did too. I wouldn't trust them. These are definitely cast. Where at? China, but I don't know. Mine actually cracked right here in this front little pin, which is part of holding all this crap on. And I didn't even bother undoing it to put on the flash hider. Now, again, it looks fine. Pretty close to SVD, including on the length. But no one does that. They're going to want to put on a front sight. Now, this is the one that was originally on mine for most of all those videos. This is the short style, the bird cage, slotted. This is meant for the full-length barrel, the thinner barrel, but it's essentially inspired by the SVDS style. But the reason I originally had it on was it reminded me of the Tigers in Russia, the semi-automatic ones. Be they had the 620 millimeter barrel or the 520. Most of them over there had that, because flash hiders, at least back then, were okay, but bayonet lugs were not. But as I've said in previous videos, I finally just nutted up and put on the correct one. I don't know. I knew one day I'd get a wild hair. So here's the original, and it's a single piece. Here's the one here. You can see they're pretty similar. And of course it does have a bayonet lug, and yes, I know my pins aren't driven in all the way. I just did this a day ago. I need to chuck it up and actually press them in, but you know, we're doing it for a video right this minute. And of course it does have a bayonet lug, and a question that's often asked was there a special bayonet? No, not really. I'd say your typical 6X4 or 6H4 AKM Type 2. Be nice if it were Ishesque marked, but any will do. Would work just fine. Here it is on the gun. This style came into production in the mid-60s and became more and more common, replacing the original AKM in the late 60s. Even though this is known as the SVD 63 and there were a couple of hundred built at Ishesque that year as kind of a pre-production batch, they didn't really hit full rate production until 64 and really didn't start to see military service in any numbers until 67. So this would have been the style, Bakelite. And yeah, it was just a standard one. Now, I think sometimes they were serial matched to their guns, at least in certain nations. But other than that, yeah, just any AKM style. And the reason they have a single piece flash hider, bayonet lug, side assembly up until you get to the base, which is drift adjustable, was for accuracy. Anytime you have something threaded on, there's that chance of shifting, wiggling around, plus you have to clean the threads. This is why the original PSL was a single piece, the Yugoslavian M76, and other guns too, for example, like the Swiss STGW57 and later the STGW90. There are benefits to not having a removable muzzle device, especially if you're not expecting to use a sound suppressor or blank fire device. These are not internally threaded for like a practice and all that. Of course, a full-length barrel. Speaking of barrels, you know, one thing, the original SVDs had the nearly 24.5-inch barrel assembly, and there were a few SVD styles that came in the pre-ban era, but most of the ones you encounter in America are the Tiger. Now in Russia, they do make them with that barrel length, but the ones that were imported here had the much shorter 520 millimeter barrel, which is about, what, 20.5 inches, give or take. And so even if you compared like the SVDS, which had the 22.25, it's still shorter. That's why something like this, or the Chinese MDM 86 are more interesting, because it's just where that military style. There wasn't a lot you could do with a Tiger to give it the proper barrel length, except just make it into a faux SVDS. And back when they were relatively inexpensive, that was okay. But today, most of your Tigers have been well worn and or are just very expensive for what they are. So that really gives the interest to folks with the HD18 or even finding a pre-ban Chinese. The Chinese are interesting though, because they never had a production license to make the Dragunov. No, they actually captured a good number after their war with Vietnam and reverse engineered them. I know, shocker, China reverse engineering something. They had a few versions, the Type 79 and the Type 85 come to mind, and of course that's what the MDM 86 was named after. And of course they not only did them in 7.6254R, but also 308. And I'm not knocking the Chinese guns, I just don't find them quite as interesting for current money. If they were still, you know, priced, sure. But when you consider their same money as an HD18, and what these actually are, and these are brand new with a warranty and accessories, and the Chinese guns aren't, personally I would still go with that. But the Chinese guns are good to go with furniture and such, and these are not, so let's keep on. These are non-original handguards. They do come on it. They're the same style, completely interchangeable. For mine, I went with the polymer. A lot of folks would probably prefer the wood, but I actually like the kind of heat dispersion abilities of the polymer, and I've always kind of liked the double look of polymer wood mixed together. Either way, this is a style I went with. It's easy enough to change them. There's a lever on the side, comes forward, all that good stuff. Again, I'm really happy these do have the 2-position gas regulator, because we didn't get that before, and it's just nice. One of them kind of vents some gas, other one's just, you know, straight on, full system. By the way, as I said long ago now, even though it might kind of resemble an AK, the system is very different. This is a short stroke system, kind of like an SKS, whereas of course an AK is a long stroke. Even though it does use a rotating bolt and a reciprocating charging handle, even the bolt lockup is actually different compared to a Kalashnikov. The trigger group is very different. It's actually removable for cleaning, maintenance, whatever. Pretty neat. Scope rail is very similar, as I mentioned. Now, these both have the newer style smooth top cover, which came in the 21st century. Earlier ones had a ribbed, just like how the AK changed production. So nothing really to change there, mag release. But then, of course, you come to the buttstock, and you have a choice. The one these come with, again, is aftermarket. It's a little bit longer, has a very sporter butt plate, and I don't know when these are made, but mysteriously, the screw in here is actually the Chinese pattern, which is a different length compared to, say, the Russian pattern. So if you get one of these, just realize if you go to a European-style stock, you'll need a different screw or something else. Almost as if these are made in the East because of the pattern, but anyway, moving on. Clamp-on cheek piece. We do have a sling bar back here. Yada yada. It's too long for me, and I think for a lot of people too. I don't know, it just doesn't quite look right. So, you have a couple of choices on the stock. Why not? As I said, I went with the kind of wood look. This is a laminate birch with this shell-like finish. It's a Russian one, steel butt plate. Yeah, whereas like the Romanian PSL has a little bit of recoil compensation in this butt plate. Nope, this is just straight up against your shoulder, man up. And it has a clamp-on cheek rest too, very similar to actually what comes on the HD18. The pistol grip is much straighter, a little more narrow, but more importantly for short folks like me, this is the more or less Warsaw length, whereas this is more NATO length. It just feels right. And I like matching it up with this type of handguard. But you could argue, since it does have the more modern features, like the smooth top cover, you'd probably want a stock like this. This is the modern polymer version. It's completely interchangeable. Essentially the same profile, just, you know, not made of wood. And very similar, just doesn't have this middle piece here, because it really doesn't need it. And I do like the cheek piece, how it folds out of the way and then kind of locks into position when you need it. It has a spring-loaded detent. And the reason I have both of these, kind of like with the front sight, I could see one day me getting a wild hair and deciding to put this on. I don't know. I really like the look of the wood, says the blind guy, more. But I actually do like this style of cheek piece more. I think it's just more user-friendly. But there's just something so iconic about the Dragunov buttstock. By the way, just as the magazines won't interchange, even though they look like they would, like the PSL or the Yugoslavian, the buttstocks don't either. Again, this is in no way an AK, whereas a PSL really is just an overgrown RPK, which itself is an overgrown AK. So those are your choices. When I picked up mine, you could find SVD parts, lightly used, sometimes virgin new, for okay money. Not terrible. But over the past nearly 4 years, with a couple of batches of HD18s coming in, plus international affairs being the way they are now, and wars and all that, the surplus parts, even small importers and stuff, have really, really dried up. And there's a few reasons for that.
Did y'all hear that?
Officially, on the U.S. side, yes, Russia's under sanctions and embargoes and all that. That's pretty straightforward. Maybe not as well known, Russia itself, its government, really cracked down several years ago, and doubly so since, you know, 2022, on parts walking out the back of the factory. And one thing you definitely don't want to do is get in hock with the Russian government, Russian police. It's a bad thing. So both sides have really made it hard to get these parts in. You know, you would think some might come from third-party nations in Europe, because a lot of folks use these, East Germany, Poland, etc. But I think it was just so far in the past, and they didn't have that many. I mean, like, I think Germany had 2,000 Dragunovs. So I just don't know if there's that supply there. Who knows? But unfortunately today, even if the guns come in, you might have a hard time finding the parts. I know the owner of this is looking for a few, and I think he's found some, but that is a challenge. Hopefully one day it will be rectified, but I just wanted to point that out. If you're looking at one of these for the next batch, and these are still coming in very small batches, like 100, 200 at a time, even with the new importer, just be aware you might have to be patient. Even I had to be quite patient for a few months to get all the parts I needed. So that it's always been that way. But I think every single person that buys one is looking for a stock, a handguard, and at least some different front sight base. And that means there's demand. And of course, right when a batch comes in, the demand goes up. What can you do? Just how it is. So kind of for the final section, my thoughts on what people were predicting back in 2021 when the HD18 first appeared, and how things have kind of turned out as we get into November, nearly now, of 2024. Okay, when these came in, there was the whole military arms channel thing. I made my opinion and, frankly, the actual facts known, as did several others. You can check out past videos. I don't like rehashing things. But people were often saying, well, the first ones were going to be expensive, and then prices going to drop as they were going to flood the market with these. There was weird numbers being thrown around even before these came in of 3,000, 4,000. They weren't based on anything, and it never happened. A, these never did flood the market. B, the price didn't go down. In fact, it's gone up. And YouTube doesn't like me mentioning numbers. Cool, and I don't really either. But it has gone up several hundred, if not even low four figures. Meaning that when Rob Ski told me I should definitely pick one of these up, is both a shooter, and I do shoot mine quite a bit. I don't baby it. But also is a quote-unquote investment. He weren't wrong. It has gone up, especially in between import batches. I could at least get my money back out. I think what also helped me was I did pick up the furniture before the price went nuts. Guys, don't pay like $1,000 for a buttstock. Don't do that. I know you want to get your gun looking right, but patience will get you at least a decent deal. But again, though, I'm not going to say how much because I don't know. I really don't. But I don't think these will ever flood the market. I think today everyone knows who really made the core gun. The story there. If you don't, use your noggin, guys. You're smart. You know what's going on. It's a clever way, and obviously the government's fine with it because multiple batches have come in. No one wants to rock the boat, but I don't think we're as scared to, show these off as we might have been, because they're fine, perfectly legal, and they have been semi-automatic. One last thing is, of course, the SVD was always semi-automatic only. Now, a lot of the imports, including the original Tigers from the 90s, had the outer battery safety removed, what's sometimes mislabeled as the auto sear. You see this with PSLs as well. Just ask Classic Firearms how well that works out if you try importing them with those intact. So you do see that, but otherwise, they're just straight guns, for whatever they are. Even though there has been a push to kind of replace these in Russian service, first with the SVD-M, and now with other versions, they still have thousands in service, and with their ongoing conflict in Ukraine, invading those fellows, they need all they can have. And of course the Ukrainians themselves have SVDs because all the former Comm Bloc, Warsaw Pact nations did. So a lot of the guns in that war are fighting each other. I think Poland also had some modernized ones for a while that they worked with. So my point is, just as the Mosin Nagant rifle is still kind of knocking about. I don't think the SVD is going to be going anywhere anytime soon. And that's why a lot of us will like this. This is such an iconic part of history. It is a good gun. Now, you can argue these should be this price, they should be that price, but they are what they are. I can tell you that when I was in Russia, back in 2008, a bare bones Tiger, polymer furniture, no optic included, was like $800 US. That was in Russia. And that was how many years ago now? So realistically, even if they were to be imported back then, they would have been, time you pay international exchange rates on money, transport cost, pay the importer, pay your FFL, you're going to double that. That's just the reality, because no one's going to do this for free. That's what kind of irks me sometimes about the firearms business is it acts like people should just do stuff as a favor for free. Would you? No, you wouldn't. Would I? No. We all want to be paid for our time and labor. And so even back then, they would have gone up. And of course, today, everything's up. That was back when you could get a Saiga for $500 brand new retail. Now look what Saigas cost. Take it for what it is. No one's forcing you. And I don't think anyone's saying this is objectively worth it. If you care about accuracy, there are extremely better options. If you're more of a historical person, I really think the HD18 is a good investment. But more importantly, it's just fun. I love shooting mine. Dragunov at dusk. And that, plus this is at least a current import at current prices, is why when a good client, and a good customer, a good guy asked me if he should get one of the Vepr RPKs, which have already jumped from 4,000, which seemed like a lot, to what, 6 or 7 now, or one of these, I said, well, if you have the money, I think he had some bonus work money to spend. Of the two, I think this would be a better target. Plus, he was really wanting a Vepr in 545, which I love that caliber, but I'm not going to tell anyone to buy a multiple $1,000 545 gun, given everything going on right now. And of course, then the hunt was on, and I called in a favor to get this gun for him, and here it is, and that's why we're doing a video. Again, I'd hope to do it in front of the camera, but everyone's just really busy right now, and that's cool. So before I do box this up and ship it out to him, I thought we'd do that little comparison. Really, there's not a lot of changes. I'd say the safety selector is one of the more notable ones. The different finish, of course, the different importer, a few other little things. But all in all, they've remained remarkably consistent. I do think B&T has improved the packaging, the presentation a little bit. A little more stuff with it. A slightly nicer case. Everything is packed in quite well. They do what they can with it to make it look decent. Again, though, I wish they'd give you the right cleaning rod. It would be neat if they could also import furniture, accessories, but maybe that's not the wisest thing given kind of how we're already riding the line with these. I don't know. You could kind of look at it either way. But I definitely don't think they have decreased in quality and features. Setting aside the tiny handful of legit SVDs that came in the 80s, and maybe a couple of Gulf War bringbacks that made their way over, I think this is the best option. And of course, if you can find the Tiger or an MDM86 for less, that's not bad. But the problem I have with the Tiger is the short barrel. It's always kind of irked me. Not enough that I would have passed one up, but I just never found one. And I wasn't willing to spend Tiger money and not get exactly what I wanted. And similarly to the MDM86. It had the right barrel length, but for one, pre-brand prices. Two, they were a reverse engineered gun. And that's not to say they were bad, but they kind of felt it. There was something about the MDM86 that didn't quite feel right. And that comes from the fact that I have handled, owned, fired an original in Russia, so I kind of knew, and it just, I don't know, maybe I just didn't like a Dragunov with a blued finish. Maybe I like the paint finish. I don't know. But again, if I had found one MDM86 for good money, I would have, but they went higher than the Tigers. considering both of those will be used, and you have to worry about where they shot with 7.62 54 are corrosive. By the way, use light ball in these guys. I know 7-in-1, you're not going to find that stuff, but don't use like 184 grain or whatever in these. Use like 150 grain, give or take, 148, 149, 151. These are new. They have a warranty, and if the money's roughly the same, and because these can be put to rights, even though finding the right furniture and front side assembly is a pain in the neck, I know, it's a pain, but there's that potentiality there. That's where I would go, and frankly did go, but I'm not going to leave it as a safe queen. I picked one of these up nearly 4 years ago now as a shooter, and I will keep using it as a shooter. And while I'm not going to let it get rusty and throw it in the back of the truck, I'm not going to worry about it too much. We take it out, we go shooting, we roll it around, we shoot prone. That's the purpose of these things, and I really don't think that kills the value much. And what small loss in value you might have is made up for in the cost and price of fun, frankly. And can you really put a price on that? Yeah, probably, but yeah. So I hope you enjoyed my rambly video this weekend. And to think, I was worried it wouldn't be long enough. And I really do want to do a few others, comparing, contrasting, getting out to the range. But right this minute, it's muzzle loading season for hunters. And yeah, everyone is just busy. So before I send this off in UPS, big and heavy as it is, good grief, I just thought we'd do a little comparison. But let me know what you think. Again, don't want to talk about the whole Mac thing. Yeah, but everything else, fair game, including, yeah, these are way overpriced, potentially. And, the SVD isn't near as accurate. I agree. But I think it makes up for it in reliability, durability, and just the fact that they were able to mass produce these. And it kind of completes my comm block squad set. Yeah, I've got kind of an example of most of the standard guns used, including that RPG-7 we looked at a long time ago. And it would just be kind of a missing set without it. But, yeah, hope everyone's having a good end of their October. Next week will be Halloween. So looking forward to that, and everything else. If you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. Like to help us out, check out Patreon. And now, if you excuse me, I'm going to throw this on the postal scale. This is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.